All right, let's talk about Vin Diesel. You hear that name and what comes to mind, right? A super deep voice, crazy fast cars, and this massive billion-dollar action series. But here's the thing. The story behind the tough guy act, behind all that money, it's a story of pure desperation, of constant failure, and a kind of drive that honestly is way more interesting than any movie he's ever starred in.
So yeah, how does that happen? How do you go from bouncing at a club to becoming one of the most recognizable faces on the planet? Well, the answer is this incredible journey. It's a story that's really defined by poverty, by nonstop rejection, and even personal demons and public scandals that would have just completely ended most careers. But for Vin Diesel, it seems like every single setback was just another stepping stone.
To really get the global icon we know today, we have to rewind. I mean, all the way back to the beginning, to a kid named Mark Vincent. His world was just a million miles away from Hollywood. It was a world of poverty, of uncertainty, and it's that world that forged the relentless drive he would absolutely need to survive.
I mean, the contrast here is just staggering. Think about it. The first major hit he took in his life happened before he was even born. His biological father just left. He was gone. His mom, who worked in theater, moved him and his siblings to New York. But, not the glamorous New York. They grew up in the poor neighborhoods, the kind of places that build you up tough but don't really give you much of a childhood.
But here is where one single person just changed everything. While the absence of his dad left this huge void, the presence of his stepfather, Irvin, gave him something way more important: a purpose. Irvin was an acting teacher, and he's the one who introduced young Mark to the world of theater. And not just acting, but everything. The lights, the movement, how to own a stage. This was the spark. This was it.
But okay, having a purpose and actually finding a path, those are two totally different things. The journey from those small New York stages to a big Hollywood screen was just this brutal, decade-long grind filled with dead ends and a constant daily fight just to survive. So get this. He actually went to college to study English. He figured, mastering language would make him a better actor. But that dream was just calling too loud, and eventually he dropped out. And that is when the real hustle started. To make ends meet, he was a telemarketer, which, when you think about it, is probably where he perfected that iconic voice. He spent years as a bouncer in some pretty rough nightclubs, and that's where he built that famous physique. He was even in a breakdancing crew back in the 80s. Every one of these jobs was a piece of the puzzle, all while he was just standing in these endless audition lines getting told no over and over and over again. After finally landing a tiny, uncredited role, he thought, this is it, my big break. But it led to nothing, absolutely nowhere. And that disappointment was just crushing. So in this moment of pure defiance, he decided, okay, if Hollywood won't give me a shot, I'm going to create my own. He scraped together every single penny he had, just $3,000, to write, direct, and star in his own short film. And this right here, this became his philosophy for everything. It wasn't about getting famous. It was about proving to himself and to the world that he could create something real, something that would force Hollywood to finally pay attention. He was basically building his own door into the industry because they just refused to open one for him. And what's wild is that his film was accepted into the Cannes Film Festival in 1995. I mean, for a kid from a poor neighborhood in New York, that's just a massive achievement. But then, crickets. Nothing. Not a single phone call, not one offer from any production company. So, faced with total rejection again, he didn't quit. He went back to work, this time selling electronics, and saved up $50,000 to do the whole thing all over again, but this time making a full feature film about his own life and struggles. After all that fighting, all that struggle, after literally forcing his way into the conversation, one person finally noticed. And in 1997, a single phone call came in that would change the entire direction of his life, forever. That call, it was from Steven Spielberg. The legendary director had seen Diesel's indie film and was so blown away, he actually created a role for him in Saving Private Ryan. All of a sudden, he's on set with legends like Tom Hanks. That role led directly to him being cast as the voice of the Iron Giant, a part that proved he had this incredible emotional depth, not just muscle. And then, in 2001, came the role that would change everything: Dominic Toretto. But here's what makes his whole breakthrough so powerful: what was happening behind the scenes. There he was, standing on the set of one of the biggest movies of the year, and secretly,
he was fighting a really severe addiction to alcohol. Spielberg noticed, but instead of firing him, he and the entire cast, they rallied around him. They gave him the support he needed to get through it. For the very first time, he felt like people truly believed in him, maybe even more than he believed in himself at that point. So with the insane success of The Fast and the Furious, Vin Diesel was suddenly a household name. His life was completely transformed. But, navigating that level of global stardom, it brings a whole new world of problems. We're talking ego clashes, public scandals, things that threaten to tear down everything he'd worked so hard to build.
And the franchise didn't just grow, it exploded. The first movie was a surprise hit, sure, but by the time Fast 5 came out a decade later, it was a global juggernaut, pulling in over $600 million. But as the money and the stakes got bigger and bigger, so did the tension behind the camera.
And then Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson enters the picture. And man, the boiling point was reached pretty quick. On camera, their chemistry was, electric. But off camera, it was just explosive. See, Vin, now a producer on the films, saw himself as the guardian of this whole thing. And you gotta remember, this is a guy who had to fight for every single opportunity. So that need for control, born from years and years of rejection, came out as this sort of tough love style on set. But The Rock, who's a megastar himself, he wasn't having it. He saw it totally differently. It all blew up when he went public, calling out an unnamed co-star for being unprofessional. I mean, come on, everyone knew exactly who he was talking about. It got so bad, the studio literally had to put them in separate movies, creating a whole spin-off for Johnson's character just to keep them apart. Right as he's dealing with that professional firestorm, a personal one just erupts. He's in a press tour in Brazil, and an interview goes viral for all the wrong reasons. Diesel is seen just repeatedly interrupting this female interviewer to comment on her looks, making her visibly uncomfortable. The clip spread like wildfire, and the backlash was immediate and intense. For an actor whose biggest franchise is built on this idea of family, this was a huge blow to the public image he was trying so hard to create.
So now he's facing a fractured professional relationship and a public image crisis. So what does he do? He makes a very deliberate pivot. He shifts his focus away from all the drama of being a star and doubles down on the two things he felt he could control: his family and his legacy.
It was basically a calculated three-step comeback plan. First, he totally leaned into his role as a committed husband and father, which started to soften that tough guy image. Second, he took the voice role of Groot, a character who says only 3 words but has this immense heart. It was a genius move that won back a ton of public affection. And finally, he started using social media to just bypass the press completely. He would share these candid, sometimes goofy videos of himself, creating this direct, unfiltered connection with his fans, totally on his own terms.
In this right here, this really shows you everything about his priorities. The Fast and Furious franchise isn't just a job anymore, it's his life's work. He protects it fiercely, so much so that he's completely blended his personal and professional lives. He even cast his own son in one of the recent movies. For him, the themes of the movies, family, loyalty, legacy, well, they're the themes of his own life.
So when you really step back and look at the whole picture, it's just this incredible story arc. The man who once fought tooth and nail to make a $3,000 film now sits on top of one of the most successful and long-lasting franchises in movie history. He's weathered storms that would have completely sunk anyone else, all while clinging to the thing that he created. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, right? As he gets into this more mature phase of his career, what will he ultimately be remembered for? Is it the tough, larger-than-life action hero who basically defined a whole genre? Or is it the man who fought so fiercely to build and protect his own idea of family, both on screen and off? Maybe the real answer is that for Vin Diesel, those two things have become one and the same.